just be like 6 men in there and I sitting there and I'm like, I'm in danger.
Porn rot.
Boobs, just on page 3 of the newspaper. Okay, it's getting hot here.
Shame.
I'm Jess, this is Joe, and this is Shame on Who, where we hold our own court of public opinion and dive into the pop culture moments of the past and the present and decide whether shame should really lie. I will be presenting the evidence, but the final judgment goes to, drumroll, it's Judge Joey. Are you ready to get judgy?
I'm ready to get judgy.
So what has been a shameless moment that you have seen this week? This could be something online, something you've seen in person, just people acting shamelessly.
Well, the most recent one is Maya Jama and her no longer BF.
Ruben Dias, the footballer.
That's the one. What do you call it? Toe dipping.
Toe dipping. I hadn't heard of toe dipping. Like, I hadn't heard of the phrase, but I knew, like, we've all seen it. Like, experienced it.
Oh, we've all been a victim to toe dipping.
Oh, we have.
We have.
The dip. So this is when guys, like, give you a little follow, maybe a like, just to test the waters. They're dipping the toe in. And then if you don't respond, they give you the unfollow.
It's like a little bit of fishing, you know? You throw the bait out. If
Trying
they
to
bite
reel
the
it
bait,
in.
if they bite the bait, they've got you.
Yeah.
Rude.
Shameless.
Shameless.
Shameless. You know what? My shameless moment this week, I was in the sauna. And there's always shameless stuff that happens in there.
I don't know, the stories I hear about you in this sauna.
I know. And it's always one of them. This is actually awful, but you can tell when you're kind of like, we've all got a little bit of the porn brain, because sometimes I'll go in there and it'll just be like 6 men in there and I sit in there and I'm like, I'm in danger. Do you know what I mean?
Porn rot.
Yeah, literally. Porn rot. Anyway, this is not about porn rot. The mad stuff's going down in this sauna when I'm in there. So I go in there after the gym, I'm sitting in there, minding my own business. I go in the other day, there's 2 men in there and me. One man spread out along the side. Have a bit of spatial awareness to start with, you know. And he has his phone in there. Who takes your phone in the sauna?
But it's hot.
It's very hot.
And iPhones always say, this is too hot. Like, you need to cool your phone down to use it. Why are you in a sauna with it?
So he's on his
Be
phone,
without it.
lying down. His head is basically in my little toes because I'm like crunched up in the corner. Then he starts like huffing and puffing and swearing. And I'm like, I'm trying to mind my business. The other man in the corner over there, he's about 50. He put his foot up against the wall and started doing like crunches in the sauna. And it's like, babe, them extra 10 sit-ups are not going to be doing anything from what I can see.
On the bench. Just on the bench bit.
He's lying down on the bench, legs up, doing crunches in the sauna. And it's just me looking at him like, are you well?
Time and place.
You would never catch a woman doing that. You would not.
For what reason?
The stuff I see in this sauna, I've seen someone before with like a foot file.
That's unhygienic.
And they were just in there,
that's
filing their and I was like, your skin shavings are going to be on the sweaty floor. It's already grim in there.
His DNA is on the floor. This is what I mean. And I don't know why this always happens to you. But there's been instances in other places where just some barbaric behaviours happen in either the steam or sauna.
It's always in the steam or sauna that men decide to do the most shameless stuff. Unhinged, shameless stuff. Are you ready for today's case file?
Let's go.
So today we are going to be throwing it back to the early 2000s. This is like peak millennial era. Snake on your phone, SMTV on Saturday mornings, and boobs just on page 3 of the newspaper. Yeah, we're going to be diving into the Lads Mag era. So this is something that I guess we have our own little personal experience with, right?
Truly.
We were diving into the Lads Mag era literally and physically in our teenage years, shall we say.
Yeah.
And it was a time, I think, the early 2000s where everything felt really like hypersexualized. You know, like what do you remember if you cast your mind back to the 2005, 2006, 2007 kind of age? Well, we would have been like, what, like 11, 12, like that kind of just getting into like year 7, year 8.
Footballers' Wives TV show.
Yes.
Actual wags.
An actual wags. Yeah, this was like peak era of like Victoria Beckham. The lob.
The lob
and the tennis ball boobs. Icon. I'm really excited. It's like World Cup time.
Yes.
Soon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are the wags going to be making an appearance again? Because have you seen Abby Clancy has got a new Juicy Couture campaign out in the like velour tracksuits for the World
Fun.
Cup? I know. So I'm like, are the WAG's going to be coming back?
Maybe the WAG era,
Bring back WAG. I feel like you're semi-predicting it in your top.
basically.
Yeah. So yeah, the WAGs. What else?
Big Brother, but people having sex on Big Brother. Do you remember they were all shagging? Do you know how wild it used to be? And I mean, like, you were watching people shag on TV.
In the hot tub.
In the hot tub, under the table, in the showers. Like, that was like naughty's time.
Yeah.
Where everything was just so available
Yeah,
in
it's
front of
all
you.
sex sells. The era of Playboy.
Yes.
Very much so. When
Yes.
it was the Playmates and the TV show. I think it was called Girls Next Door. And this was one, I think it was on E, and it was Bridget, Holly, and Kendra, the three main girls. And it was based at the Playboy Mansion.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I used to watch this with my mum. Are we going to judge her parenting? I don't know.
Angela.
But hey, we all were watching it. We all were watching it at the time. I used to watch this, and it was just the girls living in the Playboy Mansion. Hef was just around.
Yeah, he was just there in his robe,
Yeah, he'd pop up every now and then.
you know, put an arm around a girl.
And I don't think I ever fully realised what was going on there
No.
at that age.
No, because you got to think they had what looked like a really fun life living in this big Playboy mansion. There was a pool in the backyard.
Parties
they'd
all
go
the time.
shopping, parties. But then behind closed doors, they're all getting dicked down by Hugh Hefner, who was old then.
Well, he's dead now.
I know, but he was old then. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he was. And you know what? We're laughing at her, but actually, there's been the documentaries out since and autobiographies on the Playmates saying like he actually treated them really awfully. And maybe we'll do an episode about that one time. But
Yeah.
But weirdly, it was marketed towards teenage girls because flicking through the Argos catalogue on your birthday and Christmas, I'm circling with the biro, the duvet, the cushion.
Yeah.
I'm going to WH Smith and getting my Playboy pencil case when the new term comes around.
Yep.
Everything
My
was
bedroom, black and pink, Playboy cushions, Playboy duvet.
head to toe.
I
Decked
had
out.
the neon light.
Oh, you fancy.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're a
Thank you.
fancy girl.
Thank you.
Yeah, everything was that. And you just walked into like 12-year-old girls' bedrooms. It's like, and it was all based on this man basically exploiting young women. That's the kind of era we're talking about. So I feel like we've painted the scene.
Yeah, we have.
We've painted the scene.
We have.
So not to dive too much into our own experiences, of course. Maybe we'll save that one day for an autobiography. Hey, check out my book. Talk about it a little bit. But how old were you when you got involved in the lads' mags?
I was 18, turning 19.
Just a little baby.
Just a baby.
I was also exactly the same, actually. I featured in, I think it was Zoo first when I was 18. Then my first shoot, I was still 18, I think, for Nuts. And then my contract with Zoo, I was 19.
Yeah.
When I think of that now, it does give me a little bit like sick in my throat.
Yeah, it's weird because I look at 18, 19-year-olds now and then I was that age getting my boobies out.
Yeah.
In a magazine.
To hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people.
Yeah.
For not enough money.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I look now, like, fine, there was definitely fun times as well as the not so fun times. But I just think the age bit is what gets me. When I was in Zoo and it's like this 19-year-old is thinking of getting her boobs out for the very first time or taking her top off for the very first time. Fingers crossed, lads. And I was just like,
emphasizing on the age. Do you know what I mean? That was like the selling point, wasn't it? Like teen.
To like grab you as soon as you're 18.
Yeah.
Oh, it gives me the chills. Like, I look at my little brother now, who's just turned 20, and I'm like, baby.
Child.
Do you know what I mean? A literal child.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to be 18 doing all that.
We weren't thinking about it like that, though, were we? Like, we were just turning up to a photo shoot, getting our makeup done, getting paid, going home.
Well, what I always find really interesting is the conversation around like empowerment and whether you were being exploited, whether you enjoyed it, all of this. The thing that I always think is actually when I was going to a professional photo shoot, you'd have a makeup and hair artist there, you'd have the stylist there, you have a photographer there, you have a team of people there. It's under contract with your agent. It's all very legit, right? It'd be like any other kind of like fashion shoot or celebrity photo shoot that you go to. And in that moment, behind the scenes or in front of the camera, I loved it. Like, I felt so like not even empowered, just like confident. I loved like having my photo taken. I felt like a model, like that was my job. That part of it, when it was all legit, was really fun.
Yeah.
But the bit that comes after, which is when it goes out to the audience, which was a male audience, the feelings of shame,
the whole dynamic changes.
The whole dynamic changes. And I think that's really interesting because it's like not the act itself of like posing semi-nude or in your lingerie that is like seen or feels something to be ashamed of. In fact, actually, when we think of like boudoir photo shoots, it's this whole thing that people literally pay other people to take photos of them without clothes on because they know how great it can feel to look at yourself and be like, yeah, like feel confident, to have that makeover. So it's like that element of it is actually can feel really great. It's the aftermath when it goes outwards to a male audience,
the reaction,
and the messages you get and the judgment you get, that then you start to internalize, start to get the unwanted kind of sexual comments and DMs and images sent, and it's like then it feels different. And that's so interesting because it's like you think of lingerie shoots that are for like fashion brands or women's magazines or female celebrities doing them kind of shoots, and it's like you just don't have that. Is there anything from that kind of era that you can remember as being a bit like that wasn't right, or like questionable, or something that was done that you didn't totally agree with?
Is in like on the photo shoots or after?
More like after.
Yeah.
Like
well, yeah. Well, every time that I would do a shoot with Nuts magazine, because I was contracted to them, I thought, right, that just stays in the magazine. But then obviously people are quite creative. And Twitter was the go-to for everything. I guess it still is to an extent, but like it was daily updates, you know? And I remember I was on Twitter just innocently scrolling, and I went onto my notifications and someone had cut out my page from Nuts magazine and put it in a nice little... Do you call it Polly Pocket? Because I call it Polly Pocket. It's not called a Polly Pocket, is it? The plastic...
Like the plastic little film that you put in your...
Yeah, that you put in like a ring binder.
Yeah.
I call it Polly Pocket.
Yeah,
I don't know
would
what
call
it's
it that.
called.
But
it was that. Covered.
And then...
With his fluids.
With his...
Fluids.
His fluids.
Bodily fluids.
Right, so he'd ripped out a page from Nuts magazine, put it in a Polly Pocket, and then had masturbated onto it. And
tweeted it to me.
Tweeted you a photo of it because you really
like,
wanted that.
Oh, I think that was the first time that I realised people's sexual thoughts and reactions to the photo shoots, because I thought nothing of it. Like I said, you turn up to a photo shoot, it's all willy-nilly, it's happy days, it's my job. But then I got that and I was like, okay, we're now in the wild, wild west.
Yeah. And I think some people might think that's crazy. What do you mean you didn't think of that? But like,
why would I think of that?
Yeah.
I'm not thinking of the men's sexual thoughts and reactions to my photo shoot, because to me, I'm going to a shoot. Blinkers are on. That's my job. That's my work. That's my income.
Yeah. And sorry to burst the bubble, guys, but when you're on a photo shoot like that, the last thing on your mind is thinking about, you know, Roy from bloody Wrexham who's buying a magazine for £1 a week later. Like, no, you're not thinking about that. You're just having a good time with girls on the set. Like, that's it. You're not thinking about the men.
Everything
afterwards.
is a professional dynamic.
Yeah.
There's nothing seedy or sexual about it.
Yeah. That was for me as well. It's like the fact that social media became such a big thing around that time when I started modelling, that then the men could message me unsolicited dick pics, tell me what they want to do to me after seeing my photos. And I thought, I didn't sign up to that.
Yeah.
Like, that isn't it. You don't get access to me. Like, I'm literally a photo in a magazine. That was that. And that for me definitely very quickly and early on into my career, like, changed the way that I felt about it. Because I started to like not enjoy it because of that.
Yeah.
And not because of my actual job, which is just to have my photo taken.
Yeah.
Like, the rest of it was like emotional exhaustion of like having to deal with these men.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing that also pops into my mind when I think of that era, and something that always like baffled me, was the way that they could just print like whatever they want in terms of like the interviews.
Yes, of course.
Because my very, very first interview for my very first paid job I'd ever had as a model was for Nuts magazine, and I wasn't even meant to be shoot with them that day. It was meant to be a casting.
Yeah.
And on the train down, they phoned my agent. They were like, "Yeah, we're actually just going to shoot Jess today." Like, and that was that. I was like, oh my God, immediately in. So I had when you talk now about people having like PR training, absolutely zero. I'd never been interviewed before.
Yeah.
And then I remember sorry. Yeah, it's every time the guy interviewing me, and it just makes you laugh because I was so innocent. And him being like, wow, so this is like your first photo shoot, like your first time in nuts, like your first job. Like, what is it like for you? It must be kind of like overwhelming. And I said, oh, well, I've done pageants before and there's a swimwear around. So like, it's not that different really. And then I had a boyfriend at the time, by the way, who did not enjoy any of this. Ironically, because, Nuts magazine was always in their student house. Anyway, and I remember my double page spread, open it up, and in big writing was like, taking my clothes off is nothing new to me. I was mortified. I was like, I didn't say that. I did not say that. My boyfriend flipped out and he was like, you're an embarrassment. And I was crying and I was like, but I actually didn't say that.
They would always twist words. Always.
And ever since then, in every interview, I'd say the least possible.
Yeah.
And I remember once I did an interview and I think it was about like a beach shoot. So they were like, oh, summer's here. Like, what do you sleep in? And I was like, pajamas.
Yeah.
And they were like, what kind? And I said, oh, fluffy kind. No, Jess. They were like, you need to give us more than that. And I was like, I ain't giving you nothing.
Always. I had the same question. It was like, what do you wear to bed? And I was like, an oversized t-shirt. They're like, a bit more sexy, Joey, come on. And I was like, okay, a 3-piece lingerie set then, red lace. They're like, perfect. Who's going to be going to bed in that? A 3-piece, bra, suspender belt, panties, and obviously the stockings.
The only men who would have believed that if they read that were virgins who had literally never gone to bed with a woman before.
Porn rot.
Sorry. Porn rot. Literal porn rot. And did anyone even read the interviews anyway?
Yes.
Let's be honest. Did they?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. I've had people message me being like, oh my God, when you said that in that interview in the Daily Sport. And I was like, yeah, I didn't say that. They're like, oh. I was like, they write what they want you to hear. Use your brain. Like, why would I say those things?
But it kind of leans into how the press can just get away with doing anything, printing anything, saying anything, and there wasn't really much that we could do about it or many other people could do at the time. Even now, so now when I see stuff printed, I do take it with a pinch of salt. I'm like, did they really say that?
Yeah, because it's very easy to believe it, isn't it? Because you think, surely they must have.
That leads us on to our case study today.
Hell yeah.
And you mentioned the Daily Sport, and we're definitely going to get into the Daily Sport and how, shall we say, toxic some of their behaviour was. So right at the centre of today's case is iconic glamour model of the 2000s, Keeley Hazell. Keeley was one of the biggest glamour models of that time. And this was like peak Lad Mags era, I think. Like when we were doing it, it was starting to fizzle out. But this was like when you would picture like the pastry girls getting papped to the footballers every Saturday going out in London. Like, you had like Katie Price around.
Pricey.
Don't underestimate the pricing. And this was just like the era of these girls making bank. I would say the most I ever got paid at the time when I was modeling for a shoot, I think was $2,000 maybe at that era, which was amazing for like 19-year-old student. These girls were getting like $20,000 a photo shoot.
Oh, ridiculous.
Like they were getting their money.
They were on a yearly contract and still getting paid per shoot too on top of that. Like it was...
Oh, they were cashing out.
Yeah.
And Keeley entered this world when she was just 18, which is so young. She entered the Sun's competition to be like, they called it Pastry Idol later on, but at the time, I think it was that similar world, pastry competition to win, and she won. And kind of got catapulted into this world from, shall we say, very humble beginnings. She talks all about this in her book, which is why I feel like I'm like a Keeley geek, because I like inhaled that book. It's called Everyone to See My Tits, which is so amazing. But yeah, she came from humble beginnings, living in kind of like council housing, really having no money. So being catapulted into this world, 18 years old, was seen as like her escape, I guess, and a way of bringing herself out of poverty, but also like her family and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that's really important to think of when we, when we're talking about the Lads Mags era, there's lots of conversations around like sexism, but there's also so much of it comes down to like capitalism as well, and how like it was kind of the only route for a lot of young women from working class backgrounds to make a lot of money. And I think we kind of see that a bit with like OnlyFans as well.
I was gonna say, yeah.
It's like that one job where women are at the forefront. Most other industries, it's men who are the highest earners. And it's that one chance that there isn't really an entry level where you have to, obviously you don't have to have like qualifications or anything. You just got to look good, you know, and you got to have access to a camera. And we kind of see that now as well with OnlyFans.
Yeah.
So Keeley started doing that and getting overnight fame. And then she was in everything. Like we're talking FHM, Nuts Zoo. She was like in the top like 10 of Nuts and FHM like sexiest lists all the time. Like the it girl of the era. And then in 2007, so like we're going nearly 20 years ago now, okay? She was just 20 years old when all of that kind of changed very publicly. And the court of public opinion was called on. Now, what had happened was Keeley had filmed a private sex tape with her boyfriend at the time, who in her book she names Theo. Obviously, that's a fake name. Whilst they were on holiday, very, shall we say, like Pamela Anderson vibes.
Yeah.
It's a private sex tape. Absolutely everyone's prerogative to do that.
Yeah, truly.
To keep private.
Yeah.
So she kept the tape at home. And when she dumped her boyfriend for cheating on her, he allegedly, I'll say allegedly to cover my own back, but you know, this is all in Keeley's book, broke into her home, stole some things, threatened her, and stole some electrical items. I think that included the camcorder. Okay. But when she checked, the tape itself was still there. So she actually thought, thank God, like he hasn't took the tape. I've got the only copy, like we all good. Fast forward a few months later, and her friend, who is another page 3 girl, calls her on a Sunday morning, being like, you're in the Sunday Sport. And it's screenshots of your private sex tape printed on the front cover. Imagine the fear, the panic that would creep
out of control. Like, what can you do in that instance? Like, what can you actually do other than just look at it and think, fuck?
You would freeze.
Yeah.
You would absolutely freeze. And again, like even now, newspapers are still huge, but this is the height of like, you're not getting your news from social media at the time. So like every single person in the UK is buying a newspaper on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So Keeley went down to the local shop, got a newspaper and just saw that her private sex tape printed without her consent, without her knowledge, without her signing anything off, on a national newspaper when she was 20 years old.
Was it like explicit images?
Yes.
Explicit, really?
In interviews that she's done, she has said it was full frontal. Now, I've not seen the pictures because I would have been like literally like 11 at the time.
Yeah.
But it was graphic.
Wow.
And I cannot believe that that was ever allowed to happen.
Yeah. I didn't know that that was even allowed to happen.
How? Why were these people, regardless of legislation, right, which should have been in place, who thought that that was okay?
Yeah. And how much was he paid?
I think he was paid around 10 grand.
10 grand for completely ruining someone's life.
As someone you're meant to love, you know what I mean? They were engaged.
Yeah.
And you do that behind her back because you've cheated on her.
Yeah, that is awful.
The gall and the audacity of these men. Shameless. Absolutely shameless. So it didn't stop there. The Sunday Sport was not the only one that printed this. And I was actually really disappointed. I don't know why. Maybe it's like Stockholm Syndrome where you try and cling on to like the little good bits of like the Lads magazine era. But when I was researching this, I saw that Nuts magazine, which weirdly, I don't know why, but I kind of always thought of it being that little step up of a bit more professional, a bit less sleazy than the other mags. They printed on the front page and inside screenshots from the private sex tape of Keeley and were like, look what's out. They were all non-consensual. And that was like one of your girls.
Yeah, that's betrayal, actually.
Such betrayal, because you know that she would have known the editor, the people that were working there, the writers, all of that. Like, so these are people that you've probably hung out with, probably been on work nights out with, who are doing this to you. The betrayal is on another level. And then it kind of just keeps getting worse, because that magazine specifically that printed the screenshots of Keeley's sex tape, that edition was all about celebrities caught topless in paparazzi photos.
Right.
Now, I hadn't really thought about this before, but I remember seeing them, like famous women who were papped on them long lenses, the blurry photos of them on private beaches, on their hotel balconies, were printed in newspapers without consent. And this whole essential edition was just non-consensual images. How was that even allowed and a thing? And it was just never questioned.
I don't like it.
Don't like it
I
at
don't
all.
like it.
At all. And then you think, like, today there's so many conversations around consent, but like it really goes to show how women, their bodies, their sexuality was just totally dismissed. And it still is today, of course, we know that when we talk about like OnlyFans leaks and all of that. But like, to think of it on that scale, where national newspapers and magazines who are under publications who are really massive, right? Were printing this kind of stuff without any thought of what that could do to someone.
Yeah. That's so sad, isn't it?
And it's happening to the biggest model at the time. So you're thinking, if this is happening to like Keeley, who was probably like, I'm trying to think of, for people who weren't around, say you're thinking of like the Cara Delevingne of the fashion world when she was at her height. You know what I mean? Like that level of it, you were at the top of your game. So it's a bit of the sense of, if it's happening to you, you know, and then you've got all this money to, I guess, like fight with lawyers. What were they doing to the girls coming up who, you know, didn't have that kind of support or that well-known personality or the money to kind of go after them?
It is horrible. It's pure exploitation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
100%. And I guess there's questions around the legality of it. So today, this is absolutely a crime.
a no-go.
A no-go for the magazines, for the newspapers, but 100% for the boyfriend. Today, it is against the law in the UK to create or distribute content of someone, whether they agreed at the time to have it taken, whether they shared it with you, consent. You cannot share that without someone's consent. That would be like, people call it quote unquote revenge porn. It's image abuse, right? So absolutely, he would be getting a lengthy prison sentence for that, for just distributing it.
The fact he got nothing, and it was just so acceptable to do so.
Nothing.
And newspapers, magazines were just like, yeah, let's post it. Fuck it.
This man stole a private sex tape, sold it to a newspaper, knowing it was going to be printed, and nothing. In fact, he didn't get nothing. He got 10 grand for it.
Yeah, he got 10 grand.
He got 10 grand for it. Like, that is absolutely wild, but it isn't the first. And we're going to be diving into more of these cases further on. But it was just something that happened. These men selling private sex tapes of women they were in relationships with. And nothing was done, because the revenge porn law here in the UK, at least, came in 2015, which actually is only, 16 years ago?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it is.
11 years.
Oh my God, no, it's 11 years ago. 16, I'm like, yeah, it is. So I was thinking 15.
Years.
And I'm like...
God, 16 sounded better. 11 years ago, I was still in my 20s, do you know what I mean? Like, jeez.
Literally.
Yeah,
literally.
So it's so... like current, them laws. So to think that this happened to Keeley in 2007, it wasn't illegal until nearly 10 years later.
Damn.
What were the courts doing?
Damn.
What was the government doing?
It's like, did she take this into legal matters?
The only thing that was done legally was that she managed to get something against the papers and a newspaper magazine so that they couldn't print it again.
Right.
Because it was along privacy laws.
Right.
That was it. But there was no criminal investigations, nothing.
Wow.
Do you want to know what the court of public opinion was at the time?
Okay, come on then. Let's hear it.
Let's hear it, because we kind of talked about like the role of the boyfriend and newspapers, but what was the role of the public? So I have been doing a little bit of digging, because like we said, you know, this is before our time, really. We have children. So I thought, right, what were people saying at the time? And I found an old forum where people were discussing Keeley's private sex tape that had been shared and their thoughts on it. Now, this wasn't like a manosphere forum. It was a forum, I think it was like a digital spy forum. It was like talking about telly and the entertainment world. Okay. So women were on it as well as men. And I'm going to read to you some of the comments that are on there, and I want to hear your thoughts. Who cares? She's a hypocrite. She brandishes her breasts all week and then cries when people release pictures of her breasts that she doesn't want to be released.
But it wasn't just that, though, was it?
But also, consent. Literally, the whole point is consent. Yeah, she can consent for her picture to be taken and printed.
Yeah. They can't grasp that, though. A lot of people can't grasp that.
No, even to this day.
They refuse to.
Yeah, it's an ignorance because
Yeah.
they want to see them pictures. That's what
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, yeah.
This is, okay. It's a great tape. I urge you to see it. They should circulate it around the schools as a training video. Jail.
Mm.
They should circulate a sex tape that involves intimate relations,
Yeah,
people having sex,
yeah. And shared non-consensually.
and shared non-consensually in
in
schools
schools.
as a training video. To train what?
What?
To train who? Children? How to, like, this person, let's be honest, it's a man. Let's be honest, it's a man.
Obviously.
This man is a danger to society. Why would you see that and the first thing you think,
Show it to the boys.
show it to the boys at school or the girls as a training video?
Yeah, that's really weird. Very inappropriate.
That's so inappropriate. That's
Yeah,
actually
that's
out of whack.
borderline.
That's
You know, you get it.
I'm going to move on. I don't like that. I'm of the opinion that any C/celeb who willingly makes a sex tape wants it to be released unless they did it way before their fame. Right. Why would you think?
How does that work?
It doesn't even work because, right, if you're a celebrity,
Yeah.
why on earth would you now want that out there when we know that historically and continually women keep getting shamed for this kind of stuff? We know that this kind of stuff doesn't positively impact women. So why on earth do you think celebrities who are actually on the way of making a good career for themselves would then be like, yeah, I'm just going to make sure that my vagina is all over the internet?
Yeah.
Dumb.
Yeah.
Are you dumb?
But like, if it was done before you were famous, it's fine. It's fine.
It also kind of leans into that sense that there's just this like entitlement over famous people. Like,
truly.
as soon as you get famous, it's like, well, you have access and
like,
entitlement over your bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as you get to that certain level, it's like, well, that's what you want.
Next, someone I know is obsessed with her and was chuffed to little mint balls when he showed me it on his phone. Yuck. I do feel sorry for her, and the ex is a rat who is cashing in on her fame. Facts. And clearly has no respect for her privacy or indeed his own.
Okay.
At least they had some sympathy and they were right. He was and is a rat.
Rat.
Next. Lord, she is not the first and won't be the last to make a sex tape. The silly thing wasn't making a tape, but letting him have it or not destroying it. Again, empathy there, but like the silly thing was letting him have it. No, the silly thing...
There's still a backhand there, isn't there? Backhand kind of...
There's the victim blaming. The silly thing was letting him have it. No, the silly thing was him sharing it and selling it without consent.
Yeah. Yeah. Accountability taken for him, 0.
Yeah, because it's like, well... Surely, if you both agreed when you were in a loving relationship to make that, and you both could have copies, you're going to trust him.
Yeah, this is going to go nowhere kind of thing. Because that would have been spoken about.
Yeah. The only silly thing here is that man. Or boy, shall we say. And then this one to finish it off nicely. There is a big difference between posing in nicely shot pictures that show you topless and having grainy footage released against your will of hardcore sex. Sums it up, right? At least someone here understands consent.
Yeah.
So there's a mixed bag there of public opinions, but there's definitely a feeling of that slut shaming and victim blaming
always
coming through very loudly.
Yeah.
Do you think that still exists today?
Yeah.
Why?
What do you mean, why?
Why, as in, what makes you think it still exists today?
Because it still does exist. There's shame everywhere with everyone. With women, whatever they do, shamed continuously. But even more so because of the online world. It's so easy to have someone comment on anything on your Instagram, on Twitter, and everyone joins in on TikTok. Like, always look in the comment section. It's just men talking shit.
They do be talking shit.
And it's just so much more easier to do now.
And you know when, again, it leans into these kind of like sexist tropes and ideals of like women being the bitches and the gossips. And it's like, absolutely not. It is the men. It will always be the men in the comments saying the most abhorrent, diabolical stuff. And it's like
forums and they're all just collectively chit-chatting like, yeah, this, yeah, that, yeah, this. They're the little gossipers. They're the
gossipers. They're the little bitches.
Little princesses.
Today's case trial, there's been a lot to dive into, a lot of abhorrent behaviour from a lot of people. So do you think it's time and you're ready to pass the verdict?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Get their wig. Here we go. It's time for the verdict. What looked like a scandal at the time was actually something much more serious, and in the court of public opinion and the press back then, the shame, as we know, was placed firmly on Keeley, who was the woman put on trial when this sex tape of her was totally shared without her consent. But today, maybe Judge Joey might just have a different verdict for us on where the shame should really lie. So, Joey, shame on who?
Shame on the ex-boyfriend, but also shame on the tabloids for posting it everywhere. For the Jenny P to sit at home, flick through and look at it all.
Shame.
Shame.
Shame on the people on the forums blaming her.
Yep.
Shame on the people who pulled like any jobs that she was going to have that affected her career.
Shame on the people that sat around the table and thought this is a great idea, let's pass it through and get it publicised.
Shame on the people who looked it up and wanted to watch it knowing that it was non-consensual.
Truly.
And shame on that man who said it should be a training video in schools. It's time.
It's time.
To pass verdict.
One big shame. Thank you.
Well, if you want to hear more about Keeley's experience, please do go and buy her book, listen to it in an audiobook that Keeley narrates herself. It is Everyone Has Seen My Tits. It's absolutely incredible. Solidarity to Keeley. We love ya. And if you enjoyed this and you want to hear more of us diving into different courts of public opinion and pop culture scandals, then give us a little follow and subscribe. But until then, who are we to judge?
Who are we to judge?